You are now listening to the audio version of an article from socialscienceportal.com. Copyright 2012 by socialscienceportal.com. All rights reserved. Sink or swim. Or, just never get in the water. A biological determinant for why some people fail to get ahead in life. Since the dawn of the self-help industry, a mantra in the Help Me Help You establishment has been that personal failure is nothing less than a blessing in disguise. Mistakes allow for a social Darwinistic approach to life, where the person making them extracts valuable lessons, which are then applied to life. This process, we were told, invariably promotes success, happiness, and yes, even romantic and sexual conquests for the individual. But does it work for everybody? Not quite. The aforementioned notion presupposes, of course, that vastly dissimilar people have the same starting point, if not financially, then at least in terms of controlling their own mind. Conventional wisdom tells us that, as far as the ability to take the reins of one's own mental faculties is concerned, things couldn't be more equal. But the idea that everyone has the same, even hypothetical, chance of improving their behavior may actually be somewhat ignorant. It hinges on the belief that although every person has a different biological set of personality attributes, at least the playing field is level regarding psychological malleability. Everyone, it is said, has an equal opportunity to steer their thoughts onto a path of constructive action, and hence to the destiny of their choice. The only problem, and it isn't exactly a minor one, is that such a simplistic view has relative, rather than universal, truth to it. To give malleability proponents some credit, scientists have known for decades that personality is, indeed, greatly adaptable. Most have assessed environment's influence on personality as around 50%, give or take some percentages, depending on the trait. Diversity in values, beliefs, attitudes, and customs has been a constant throughout human evolution, so much in fact that it has now been established that some other primates too practice some rudimentary form of culture, and so it would be highly strange if these developments were not accompanied by mental flexibility. Substantial alterations of the mind are, however, limited to certain aspects of personality. For instance, while the traits of activity level and agreeableness appear to be largely environmental, research has suggested that self-control is more dependent on genetics. To illustrate this further, consider, as did Jonah Lehrer in his book, How We Decide, the illuminating example of the chronic alcoholic, and his notorious inability to exert self-control when life's challenges come knocking on the door. Most people are aware of the fact that serious alcoholism qualifies as a form of physical dependence. That is, the person suffering from this affliction can expect a steep uphill battle of painful withdrawal symptoms when trying to quit, especially if doing so too abruptly. But once the storm is over, he could still regain full control of his life, right? What could possibly stand in his way once the hurdle of habitual binge drinking has been cleared? Actually, the perhaps worst part of being an alcoholic. This applies also to various other forms of substance abuse as well as schizophrenia, is that even in the event that he evades homelessness, hunger, and unemployment, he is still by no means home free. But here's the big shocker, it doesn't necessarily have to do with so-called learned helplessness. When coming across the fact that alcoholism is largely genetic, a notion that most people are prepared to sympathize, even empathize with. What they assume is that, if only the alcoholic gets his drinking under control, other areas of his life will follow suit. But not so fast. The mechanisms of substance abuse are a lot more complicated than that. The notion That stop drinking alone will facilitate a normal life for the alcoholic is flawed on multiple levels, but particularly with regard to a vast misconception of what causes the disease. Even people who realize that alcoholism is partly hereditary fail to see that the person carrying a genetic predisposition for it carry not only that, but something more encompassing: a malfunctioning dopamine system in the brain. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter in the brain, often referred to as the reward substance. It has earned this name by causing pleasure sensations when a person does something enjoyable, such as eating good food, engaging in sexual conduct, or, that's right, taking a sip of alcohol. However, it is not distributed equally among people, nor does it play the same role in all of us. Hence, some experience a greater kick than others from hedonistic activities. Great fun with respect to rock climbing and skydiving, not so great when it comes to alcohol ingestion. Due to the excessive pleasure sensations of taking a drink, a person who fits this personality description is more prone to drink larger quantities of alcohol, but also, because they are so sensitive to dopamine stimuli, significantly more likely to partake in frequent binges. But this still doesn't explain why alcoholics, even recovering ones, rarely get their lives together fully. The reason why isn't always due to learned destructive behavior, nor is it because they've lost their head from years of taking to the bottle. It's because of what we just talked about: dopamine. Why? What has not yet been disclosed is that dopamine, the same signal substance that evokes joy and elation during exciting activities, can be highly debilitating as far as other domains of daily life are concerned. When an alcoholic is subjected to stimuli that isn't pleasant, but very much the opposite, the cognitive response that once served him so well in bringing positive emotions is no longer beneficial. Quite the contrary, it can make coping with life very difficult. This too, of course, has its explanation. When a person makes a mistake, the normal human impulse is to experience a surge of negative emotions. These emotions are not at all feckless. Their purpose, it turns out, is to encourage introspection and self-analysis. Why? Negative emotions, scientists believe, emerge as a psychological response to the fact that something in the person's life has changed. This change, without exception, requires the person experiencing them to reevaluate his life situation and to constructively adapt to new circumstances. Regardless whether a person's negative emotions stem from losing one's job, from the perceived betrayal of a trusted friend, or from something potentially downright traumatic, like a death in the family, their role is essentially the same. They are felt because such events, over the course of human evolution, often jeopardized the safety and well-being of the individual and, hence also, his reproductive success. When the chronic alcoholic fails to erect a constructive life, it is not, in other words, necessarily because he is unwilling to learn from mistakes. He is literally incapable of doing so. In order for him to straighten up and fly right, an indispensable prerequisite is first to receive negative impulses from his brain, hinting that his plight is a precarious one. Only then can he begin breaking down the situation, trying to understand what has actually happened, but more importantly, look for ways to avoid it in the future. But since the alcoholic often refrains from embarking on this psychological odyssey, the first stepping stone against the ocean of cognitive cultivation is never laid. Hence, while his peers actually cross that ocean as part of their lifelong journey towards self-improvement, he remains standing at the shore. He may very well skip a few stones at the surface of the water, but actually treading it, that which would really behoove him over the long haul, is something which he might not ever get around to doing. At first glance, the fate of the quintessential alcoholic may in many respects seem dire. But given the biological hand he's dealt, his state of blissful ignorance may ironically be just what he needs. After all, he is in many ways never burdened by the calamities of a ruminating life that many others are. But that is of course something he will not have to contemplate either. You have just listened to the audio version of an article from socialscienceportal.com. To download this audio article, or to access more articles in audio and text, go to socialscienceportal.com. This article was written by Martin Adam Prowl. Narrated using Natural Reader, version 11. Copyright 2012, by socialscienceportal.com. All rights reserved.